Welcome to Introspection, the podcast about moving from grief to growth. I'm Amy Lindner Lesser, your host. Introspection started out as a podcast about hospitality, innkeeping, and innkeepers. After about a year, I realized that my life and interests have morphed from hospitality to helping others navigate from grief and loss to growth and living. In this new version of Introspection, I will be talking about my personal experiences with loss, and there are quite a few, what I've learned along the way through my professional training, as well as from my coaching experiences. I'll also be bringing in guests to share interesting ideas. So grab a beverage, find a comfy place, take a deep breath, and listen in. Hi, and welcome back to Introspection. I'm Amy, and I'm so glad you're back here with us today. So today is going to be maybe a collection of ideas, things that I've been thinking about and wanting to share. The first one is Mother's Day. That's coming up really soon. And back in the days when I worked in home health care and I had to worry about staffing patient care, Mother's Day was the hardest day of the year. Christmas, New Year's Eve, Thanksgiving, those were all easy compared to Mother's Day. And the reason is all of us either are or have mothers. And so because of that, Mother's Day, for those of us who have lost our mothers or who have difficult relationships with our mothers, or who have lost our mothers and we had difficult relationships with them when they were alive, brings up a whole bunch of emotion. Sometimes the emotion is guilt. Sometimes it's sadness. Sometimes it's regret. Sometimes it's happiness of happy memories. But it can't pass by without us thinking about our mothers and the relationships. So what do? Depending on where you are in your grief recovery process, you may want to take the day and do something special in honor of your mother's memory. Maybe it's planting flowers where you live that were her favorite flowers. For me, that might mean planting some lilies of the valley. It might mean in my grandmother and my great-grandmother's memory, planting a lilac bush because they both loved lilacs. It could mean going and visiting a nursing home or an assisted living facility and spending some time with somebody who doesn't have other family, maybe reading a story to somebody. It could be going to a place where you have good memories, where those memories that come up when you've spent time with your mom, be it a museum or a park, that's a place where you want to go when you want to think about her. I think it was 2 weeks ago, it was Easter. So whenever that was, I went with two of my friends to a local park and walked a labyrinth. That would be a perfect, wonderful activity to do on Mother's Day, to think about your mother. With each step that you take, you can have a separate thought. It could be, I'm grateful for whatever it is that you're grateful for with your mom. So you could do maybe 10 or 15 gratitude steps. It could be, Mom, I'm sorry for the time that I yelled at you in front of whoever it was. It could be, Mom, I'm sorry for the time I burnt the toast. Each step having a different purpose and a different thought, that you take the time to reflect on your full relationship. There could also be some very healing steps, such as, Mom, I forgive you for when you embarrassed me in front of my friends. Or, Mom, I forgive you for the thing that made me feel smaller or less than. Um, I know you didn't know any better. That's another way to honor the memory of your mom. You could, if you have the financial resources, you could make a donation in honor of your mom to a foundation or a not-for-profit organization that would have meant a lot to her during her lifetime, whether it was an organization she might have volunteered at or she was part of. Maybe even if she was in a nursing home or a hospital, to make a donation in her memory to that. Maybe to a library if she liked libraries and liked reading. It could also be donating a book or two to a library, or to a school. You could also start a tradition if you have other family members, siblings who shared the mother. You could all get together and have lunch or dinner or brunch in honor of your mom. Something that I've found helpful is that I go and I celebrate now that my daughters are mothers. I have one who lives close to me, and I celebrate Mother's Day with her. So I'm her mother, she's a mother, and that makes me a grandmother. And we celebrate Mother's Day and think of my mother also, her grandmother. Another tradition, a new tradition that makes things a little easier. The first of anything after the passing of a loved one is difficult. And that's why it's always helpful to start a new tradition, to think about what you used to do and then think about how you could alter that to honor the memory and honor yourself. Setting boundaries is also extremely important. So, for example, if you're invited to celebrate Mother's Day with friends and their mothers, and that doesn't feel right to you, set your boundaries. Say, thank you so much for thinking about me. This year, I'm not going to join you. I've chosen to do blah, 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 whatever it is. It's okay. It's more than okay to put yourself first and put your needs first. You can't help anyone else if you're feeling miserable or if you're burnt out and overwhelmed. You need to take care of your needs. So if your need is to stay in bed or not get out of your PJs that day and prepare your mom's favorite breakfast, so do it. Nobody can tell you how to behave and what to do. Say yes when you want to and no when you want to. That's so important. The other two things that I think are equally as important are gratitude and self-care. Gratitude, at least for me, has always been a way to get me out of my self-pity. And when I'm when I'm feeling down in the dumps and the woe is me, everything's awful, when I start to find things that I'm grateful for, it helps turn things upside down. It turns my frown into a smile. I sound like Toys R Us, I think, for those of you who remember Jeffrey and the commercial. Gratitude does that. When we find things that we can be grateful for, it helps us appreciate what we do have. And it doesn't take away what we no longer have or the things that we're sad about, yet it it does help make things so much better. I try to start every day with at least 5 things, and I don't allow them to be the same things every day. So, 5 things that I'm grateful for. Today, the prompt in a group that I belong to was, what inventions are you grateful for? And I'm thinking, only one? Obviously, I'm grateful for the internet. I'm grateful for computers. I'm grateful for telephones, for cars. There's so many things. And it was like, wow, you know, I have a car. I can get places. I can choose where I want to go. I can pick up a phone and call somebody. Speaking of which, when I went to the Labyrinth on Easter, they had something called Phone to the Wind, and it was a phone in a box. Obviously, it was out in the woods. It wasn't attached to any phone service, but you'd pick it up and you could talk and you could say, Mom, I miss you. I wish I had said these things to you before you passed. I hope that you just know that I loved you. Or, Mom, I'm really angry. I'm angry that you died. I'm angry that you treated me a certain way. I'm angry that you played favorites, whatever it was. But it was this great phone that you could, I guess, pretend that you were talking and saying those things that were on your mind. You can do this just as easily with writing a letter and then either burning it or flushing it down the toilet after you tear it up, because obviously we don't want to say some of these things and we don't want them to go out to anyone else. But say them and then get rid of them. Get it out of your system so that once you've said it, you can't go back to it. So where was I? So that was gratitude. The other is self-care. I think as women, we are conditioned, and it's not a good thing to be conditioned in this way. We're conditioned to believe that taking care of ourselves is selfish. And you know what? It's anything but selfish. Self-care is one of the best things that you can do. If you've ever been on an airplane, you know that the flight attendants will say, in case of an emergency, the air things will come down. I can't even think what they're called. Put them on your face first, the face masks. Put them on you before you put them on a child or somebody else who is incapable. If you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of the other people. So it's not selfish at all. It's self-preserving. It's making sure that you have what you need, because as women, we take care of everybody. We tend to do that. And so we need to get the amount of sleep and rest that we need. You know, self-care isn't only massages and facials and manicures and pedicures. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. I like them as much as the next person. I love them, as a matter of fact. Self-care, though, could be 15, 20 minutes to read a book. It could be taking a walk by yourself, with a dog, with a friend. Self-care could be taking a bubble bath with or without candles in the room. It could be making a meal for yourself that you love. And even if you're eating it alone, light a candle. Put it on beautiful china or dishes. Give yourself the kind of presentation that you would make for a romantic dinner. Why can't you have a romantic evening with yourself? Sit in front of a fireplace or a fire pit. Make that for yourself. Self-care could be putting lotion on your body and taking the time to care for your body. It could be washing your hair with a special shampoo. It doesn't have to cost money. It doesn't have to mean going out of your house. Sometimes the best self-care is sitting around your house in your PJs all day. It could be making yourself breakfast and having it in bed. Whatever makes you feel good and helps to relax you and to help you de-stress, that's self-care. Make sure that you do that for yourself, especially on holidays or anniversaries that are tough. The next thing I want to talk about is guilt. I had a conversation today with a woman whose loved one passed a few months ago. And she was talking about how she felt really guilty for not begging him to not give up. That she felt guilty because she was too strong for him and didn't show him how much she loved him in words. She didn't tell him those things. And we talked about it, and she's feeling terribly guilty. Now, there are two kinds of guilt. There's a helpful guilt or a healthy guilt and an unhealthy guilt. The healthy guilt is when you know you've hurt somebody and you can make reparations to that. You can go to them and you can say, I'm sorry that I did that. If the person is no longer around, whether they've died, whether you've divorced, whether they've moved away and you've lost contact, if you can't say you're sorry to them in person, you can write a letter, which I talked about. Don't send it. Just write it with your apologies. Tear it up, somehow destroy it after you've written it. The unhealthy guilt is the guilt that you're punishing yourself with, like this person. And what we talked about was, because there's no way for her to go back and make that apology, after writing that letter, what she needed to do was to give herself permission to let it go. Since she couldn't change it, she was constantly beating herself up, sort of flogging herself with this guilt. And what we talked about was that her loved one wasn't around. He was not feeling that she was cruel to her. If he felt that way when he was alive, it's gone now. So that she needed to stop punishing herself. She needed to start to say, I did the best that I could with what I knew and who I was at that time. What I pointed out to her was that her not showing the emotion was a self-protecting measure. That had she been more open with her feelings with him, she might have fallen apart and might not have been able to help either him or her through that difficult time. But she felt guilty for telling him it was okay to let go. And I understand that. I've lived it both with my mother and my father, my mother having to let my father go and to tell him it was okay. And me telling my mother it was okay to let go, and me telling my husband that it was okay to let go. It was really hard. And did any of us really fully believe it? We believed it was the best thing for the other person, but not necessarily the best thing for us, because we were being, in some ways, selfish, not wanting to let that person go. What I've learned is that we are spirits with bodies, and spirits are energy. Energy never disappears. It doesn't go away. It doesn't evaporate. And the essence of who we are, our spirits, our souls, if you will, are always here. They're always around. And so even though I had to let go of my parents and my husband, and she, her husband, they're still here. I talk to them all the time. Sometimes I yell at them. Sometimes I laugh at them or with them. But I know that they're here and that they want the best for me, and that all they have for me is positive energy and support. That they're around making sure that I'm happy and that things go my way. Sometimes I do a little woo stuff and I'll say, okay, Steve, that was my husband, I need a good parking space. Can you find me a good parking space? And I get to where I'm going and look at that. There's a spot right in front of where I need to be. Thanks, Steve. Or, Steve, please make sure there's no traffic on the way because I didn't leave early enough. And usually there's no traffic. I can get to where I'm going without a problem. So the guilt doesn't help us. If we can, the healthy guilt does help us to make amends and to learn if there was a behavior that we could change, to change it. But in the case where we can't change anything, all we can do is change how we're using the guilt, and to learn that we cannot change the past. It's over. It's done with. We can learn for the next time, if there is a next time, and we can learn so that we don't beat ourselves up anymore. So on this day, I'm wishing all of you who are or who have had mothers a happy Mother's Day. Figure out what you need to do to get through the day, to thrive in the day, to remember self-care, to practice gratitude, and to let go of your guilt. I also want to invite you to two things. One is I have a new Facebook group, and if you go to my Facebook page and click on the banner that's up on the top, it will have a link to the Facebook group, and I'd love to have you join the group. I have some content that will only be in that Facebook group. And I'd also love, by joining that Facebook group, you will get on my mailing list, so you'll get the newsletters and you'll get to see the releases of the podcasts as they come out before they get published anywhere else. The other thing is that I'm starting a coaching program that will be 3 months, 13 weeks, because that's an actual quarter. It'll be an hour to an hour and a half session weekly to help people work through life's transitions. I've learned from my experiences that I need to be a little broader in describing what I do, that we don't often associate grief and loss with events that are transitions, life's transitions. Almost every relationship and every person is going through some sort of loss or grief, but we don't necessarily identify it as such. So this program will be either one-on-one or group, depending on which you prefer. And it will be to help you deal with transitions and to deal with them or to navigate through them smoothly, smooth sailing, get your sails all trimmed the right way, and be able to deal with rough waters as well as calm waters. There'll be some exercises for you to do. It's a commitment that's 2 ways. I'll commit my time and energy to you, and you commit to yourself and to me. So if you're interested, contact me, let me know, and I'd love to chat with you and talk more about what it entails. So thanks for joining me. Happy May. Happy Mother's Day. And I'll see you back here soon. Remember, I love you. Bye. If you liked what you heard on this podcast and want to hear more, please follow us and tell your friends. You can also find me on Facebook at Amy Lindner Lesser, Grief to Growth Life Coaching, and on LinkedIn at Amy Lindner Lesser.